I have a giant brown stonefly here. I just finished tying. I'm going to tie a giant golden stonefly. I got a size 10 extra long hook. Lets you tie back farther. This is a pretty big stonefly here. To start, I'm going to put a 1/8 inch bead on the fly. I can't believe that just happened, but I shot across the room and it landed in my box, so I get to save it. I thought that bead was gone, but I lost my hook. It's on my chair. This is a bad video. Off to a bad start here. But we'll just thread this bead on here. If you don't got your bead tweezers, any tweezers will suffice. I'm going to start by going right behind the shank of the hook with a pair of pliers, and I'm going to bend shank right at the point of the hook. That's going to give it a nice uniform tail proportion below the abdomen. Make it look more alive. I can see that's a little bit too much. I'm going to bend it back a little bit. I gotta fix my hook. Stoneflies are my favorite fly to tie and can be my favorite to fish depending on where I'm at. Gonna weight this down pretty heavily. I got 25 thousandths lead wire. I'm just gonna break about 2 inches off of it. I'm gonna start this wire right where I bent the hook and wrap it all the way forward. You don't have to count your wraps. Once you get used to how long to make it, you know about how much you need. I'm just bending over the tail end of it so it don't get caught on anything. Now, for thread, I have Danville's 140 Denver, Danville's 140 Danier thread. Try saying that 10 times fast. I'm going to start my thread right behind my lead wraps here. I'm going to build up a little bit of a thread dam. Try and squeeze that lead wraps as tight as I can against my bead. Now you can use any color bead you want on this. Size doesn't matter as much. I've used up to a 5/32 on this big size 10 long hook, extra long. It's 3x in shank. And when you bend it, it makes the fly a little bit smaller, but at the same time it comes out lively. I'm going to take some of Dave Whitlock's brown stonefly dubbing, just a little teeny amount, and I'm going to build up a little ball right at the bend of the hook, and that little ball is going to help separate and hold the tails apart. For tails, I'm going to use Goose Biots in brown. And right off the bat, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to take 4 of them off because you need 2 for the tails, and 2 for the antennas. Now this goose biot has a natural curve. You want to use that curve so it sprays away from the body of the fly. I'm going to come in here and do a couple wraps on it. Do it on the other side, making them the same length. And length doesn't matter so much here. It's your antennas that matter. Your antennas are going to be a lot longer, if not twice as long as your tails. Whenever we go to tie those in, right now I'm just building up some thread wraps around this lead wire because I'm going to pinch it flat. Stoneflies are clinger nymphs. They grab a hold of rocks and let the water flow over top of them instead of under them. Grab my long pliers here. I'm going to come in here with nice easy crimps. You don't want to come in here and put a lot of pressure on it. You'll break the wire. It is just lead. Now it's nice and flat. I'm going to lay some more wraps down on it. Make sure I didn't break any of my thread doing that. That's all nice and secure. Bring the thread right behind the bead and tie in your antenna. These can be a little tricky because it's right behind the bead. So you just have to adjust them where you want them. You kind of want them sticking out to the side a little bit, but not very much. Come in, do the same thing on the other side, make sure it's the same length. Do 1 or 2 wraps, you can pull it down where you want it. Once you get that nice and secure, you can flip the fly upside down. And I have lively legs. They're just little rubber inserts in different colors. These ones are brown. They're just little rubber. And tie this in on the bottom. I'm going to do this so you can see it a little bit better. You want to go around your front legs and catch that little post it has and scoot it up towards the front of the bead as much as possible, and then take loose wraps all the way back. Make sure it's nice and in the middle. And you can start doing a couple tighter wraps as you work your way back, and then you want to work around your legs. Now this part's a little bit tricky because it's right at the end of your lead wire. So you can come in here, cut that end out. Do the same thing up by the bead. Cut that little extra piece out of there they give you to work with. And at this point, you can do some nice tight wraps over everything. Just make sure you don't capture any of these legs down. It's the most important part of this whole entire fly. When you get the dubbing on there and get everything going, you don't want to tie those legs down. And I'm just going to build up a nice taper transaction between the tail to the lead wire. And for ribbing, I'm going to use red medium wire. I'm going to tie that in on the side. Don't worry about your tails at this point. They're going to be stuck together pretty well. You come in here, get some more dubbing. We're going to work that dubbing up and maneuver the tails around. Just do little bits at a time. Separate your tails. Work that dubbing up. Now, another important part of this tie is every segment of legs, you have to figure eight around them. So you cover up the bottom of the rubber. That way only the legs are sticking out. You do figure eight around them. Just twice. You don't need to do too much. I'm going to work this dubbing up to about halfway in between the rear two legs. Do some nice tight wraps. You can come in with your wire. For the ribbing of the tail. Not really a tail. Tails are in the back. This is more of the lower end of the abdomen. Do some nice tight wraps with the wire and jump it up and do a couple wraps over top of it. And I always come back and work the thread backwards. Keep that nice and tight and you can spiral it off. That breaks off nice and clean. And you get some more dubbing. I'll work this brown stone dubbing up to the middle legs, and then I'll get some dark stonefly dubbing from Dave Whitlock and work those underneath of the thorax. At this point, I'm going to take some backing material. Doesn't matter if it's molted or not, but you want to cut a little tie-in point in it. And jump your thread forward in between the next two segments of legs and tie that in nice and tight. Make sure it's on top and running straight back. At this point you want to switch out to your dark stonefly dubbing. You still got to do figure eights over the middle section of the fly. I'm going to do a figure eight. Cover up that midsection, add a little bit more dubbing in here. And once you get behind your front legs, you can fold this over to the back of the back legs. Nice square, even fold. Couple wraps. You can fold that back. And you want to put little amounts of dubbing on right now. You just want enough on there to cover the thread. Getting close to the bead there, you don't want to crowd the bead. And do some figure eights over the legs without trapping them down. And wrap a couple times right behind the bead. Just going to throw this extra dubbing on there real quick to get rid of it. Then you want to fold this section in half. As in, you want to cover half of the first wing plate that you just made. That dubbing's too high. Make sure you get one wrap underneath of it and pull that really tight. Do a couple wraps. Make sure you don't capture your legs. These rubber legs will break off very easily. It doesn't matter if they're sticking up or out or in, frontwards or backwards. It's just going to make it look a lot more lively when it's under the water. And you can come in with a whip finish. And usually when I whip finish, I take my pinky and hold my bobbin. That way I can take my thumb and middle finger and pull back on the legs. That way I don't capture the legs in the whip finish and have to take it off. But as a double check, once I get to this point, I leave my whip finish in there. Make sure none of my legs are caught in that. And pull my whip finisher out. Give it a nice snug tug. Come in here and you can cut your thread out. These tails aren't really that separated, but they don't look bad. Come in here with some nail polish. Coat the thread all the way around behind the bead. Make sure it's nice and secure. Keep this fly adorable, lasting long through hard pulls and riffles. And that is a lively leg giant brown stonefly.